the Philippines.
The 27th session of the Senate and the first regular session of the 19th Congress is hereby called to order. To lead us in prayer is a distinguished colleague from Makati, Senator Maria Lourdes Nancy Binay.
In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, Panginoon naming Diyos, Amang makapangyarihan sa lahat, patuloy po naming inilalapit sa inyo ang aming mga kababayang malubhang na apektuhan ng mga nakaraang bagyo. Gawaran mo po kami ng iyong kalakasan upang kami ay makabangong muli mula sa mga pinsalang aming naranasan. Nananampalataya po kami ng lubos na hindi ninyo kami pababayaan at na kayo ay mananatiling aming tunay na kanlungan at matatag na silungan sa panahon ng unos at sakuna. Our Heavenly Father, we also humbly come before you today to ask for your presence and guidance as we resume our regular session. Dalangin po namin na kami inyong patuloy na patnubayan upang magampanan namin ang aming mga tungkulin at responsibilidad sa bayan, lalong-lalo na sa paghimay ng pambansang budget para sa susunod na taon. Move and inspire us by your presence so that we may be united in spirit and in purpose. Guide our hearts, minds, and hands so that we may go about our duties as stewards according to your word. We lift up to you our nation's faith and trust that you will not lead us astray. All this we ask in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Let's remain standing for the singing of the Philippine National Anthem.
Sakit mo'y luhay, lupang dinig, sa ikamasisingit, sino lang sa langit mo, sa wala ako'y tagumpay na natin,
Yes, Secretary, please call the roll. Members.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senator Angara. Senator Binay. Senator Cayetano Alan. Senator Cayetano Pia. Senator De La Rosa. Senator Ejercito. Senator Escudero. Senator Estrada. Senator Gatchalian. Senator Go. Senator Ontiveros. Senator Lapid. Senator Legarda. Senator Marcos. Senator Padilla. Senator Pimentel. Senator Poe. Senator Revilla. Senator Tolentino. Senator Tulfo. Senator Villanueva. Senator Villar Cynthia. Senator Villar Mark, the Senate President.
With 22 senators present, the chair declares the presence of the quorum. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, at this juncture, I move that we dispense with the reading of the journal of the 26th session, Wednesday, September 28, 2022, and consider the same as approved.
Is there any objection? Chair hearing none, the motion of the Majority Leader is approved.
Mr. President, before we proceed with the reference of business, may I take this opportunity to acknowledge our guests from the gallery, our former colleague in the House of Representatives and my former seatmate in the HOR, guest also of Senate President Pro Tem Loren Legarda, former Congressman Brother Rene Velarde, Mayor Rolando Ubatay of Lumban, Laguna with Vice Mayor Belen Raga, guest of Senators Legarda, Marcos Revilla, guest of Senator J.V. Ejercito, Mayor Bebot Miraveles Valladolid of Negros Occidental.
Yes, welcome to your Senate, gentlemen and ladies. Mayor Bebot, mayang hapon, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, at this juncture, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
Thank you. And before we proceed to reference of business, I'd just like to say that it's great to see all our colleagues here today. After a 1-month break, I hope everybody's recharged and refreshed for the work ahead of us, especially of the budget.
I don't know, Mr. President, if we call it a break because the whole time we were deliberating the
Yes.
budget in the committee level and of course the significant and fruitful mission trips of our distinguished colleagues, especially the one you led, Mr. President, in Europe. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you
President.
very much. And we also like to say, APP, Asian Parliamentary. We'd also like to mention that we sent a delegation to Thailand, Mr. Majority Floor Leader, for our colleagues. And we sent, headed by, of course, Senator Bato de la Rosa and Tol Tolentino. And we'd like to make an announcement that we had gladly accepted to host the Asia Pacific Parliamentary Forum. That is about over 50 countries, parliamentarians of over 50 countries that will come here next year. So we'd like to thank Senator Bato de la Rosa for representing the Senate and receiving the flag on our behalf. Thank you,
you.
Senator.
Move that we proceed, Mr.
Okay.
President, with the reference of business. So move.
Secretary, let's proceed.
Bills on first reading. Senate Bill number 1353, an act declaring the maritime zones under the jurisdiction of the Republic of the Philippines by Senator Hontiveros.
Referred to Committees on Foreign Relations, National Defense, Security and Peace, and Unification.
1354, an act institutionalizing death benefits for community disaster personnel deployed during disaster by Senator Villar M.
Referred to the Committees on National Defense, Civil Service, and Finance.
1355, an act converting the municipality of Carmona in the province of Cavite and the component city to be known as the City of Carmona by Senator Revilla Jr.
Referred to Committees on Local Government, Electoral Reforms, and People's Participation.
1356, an act declaring August 1 of every year a special non-working holiday in the municipality of Kawit, province of Cavite, in commemoration of its founding anniversary by Senator Revilla Jr.
Referred to Committee on Rules.
1357, an act granting Philippine citizenship to Juvenal Sanso by Senator Subiri.
Referred to Committee on Rules.
1358, providing for a Magna Carta for workers, enterprises, and organizations in the informal economy and institutionalizing mechanisms for recognition, integration, and transition to the formal economy for implementation thereof and for other purposes by Senator Hontiveros.
To the Committees on Labor and Employment, Social Justice, and Finance.
1361, an act creating a regional heart center in each of the administrative regions, providing funds therefore and for other purposes by Senator Padilla.
Referred to Committees on Health, Demography, and Finance.
1362, an act creating a regional kidney and transplant institute in each of the administrative regions in the Philippines, providing funds therefore and for other purposes by Senator Padilla.
To the Committees on Health and Finance.
1363, an act establishing the Philippine Institute of Virology by Senator Padilla.
To the Committees on Science and Technology, Ways and Means, and Finance.
1364, an act amending sections 22 to 39, 42, 51, 52, 40, 54, 56, 57, 73, 108, 121, 122, 123, 174, 179, 181, 182, up to 199, and repealing sections 127, 175, 177, 178, 180, 192, and 193, all under Republic Act number 8424, the National Internal Revenue Code of 1997 as amended and for other purposes by Senator Estrada.
To the Committee on Ways and Means.
1365, an act institutionalizing and strengthening the National Cybersecurity Inter-Agency Committee created under Executive Order 95, renaming it to National Cybersecurity Council and for other purposes by Senator Marcos.
To the Committees on Science and Technology, Civil Service, Government Reorganization, and Finance.
1366, an act mandating the Secretaries of Department of Finance, National Economic Development Authority, the DBM, and the Governor of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas to appear semi-annually before Congress to report on the status and directions of the fiscal and monetary policies of the state by Senator Marcos.
To the Committees on Economic Affairs and Finance.
1367, an act amending Republic Act Number 10173, otherwise known as the Data Privacy Act of 2012, and for other purposes by Senator Marcos.
To the Committee on Science and Technology.
1368, enhancing administrative feasibility and equitability of tax system and rationalizing the imposition of the value-added tax to address intergenerational poverty, amending for the purpose various sections of the National Internal Revenue Code as amended and for other purposes by Senator Marcos.
To the Committee on Ways and Means.
1369, an act granting broader authority to the Department of Trade and Industry in the implementation of its mandate to combat deceptive, unfair, and unconscionable sales acts or practices, thereby amending RA 7394, otherwise known as the Consumer Act of the Philippines by Senator Marcos.
To the Committee on Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship.
1370, establishing in the municipality of Moyoyo, Ifugao, a Level 2 General Hospital to be known as the Eastern Cordillera Regional Hospital, integrating therewith the Major Ferdinand Edrolin Marcos Emergency Hospital in Barangay Panodpudan, Lamot, Ifugao, retaining its name as such and appropriating funds thereof by Senator Marcos.
To the Committee on Rules.
1371, establishing the Bataan Crop Research and Development Center on the campus of Bataan Peninsula State University in the municipality of Babukay, province of Bataan, and appropriating funds therefore by Senator Marcos.
To the Committees on Higher Technical and Vocational Education, Agriculture and Food, Ways and Means, and Finance.
1372, an act upgrading the Cebu Provincial Hospital in the city of Danao, province of Cebu, into a Level 2 General Hospital to be known as North Cebu Medical Center, increasing its bed capacity, upgrading its professional health care, authorizing the increase of its medical personnel, and appropriating funds therefore by Senator Marcos.
To the Committee on Rules.
1373, regulating work mediated, organized, or allocated through online platforms for the protection of Philippine workers and the GIG and the gig economy, Senator Hontiveros.
To the Committee on Labor and Employment, Human Resource Development, Trade and Commerce, and Entrepreneurship.
1374, an act establishing the agriculture information system in all provinces, cities, and municipalities, and appropriating funds therefore by Senator Gatchalian.
To the Committees on Agriculture, Food, Agrarian Reform, Local Government, Finance.
1375, creating the municipality, city, provincial, national federations of Sangguniang Barangay members, amending for its purpose Section 508 of RA 7160, the Local Government Code of 1991 by Senator Gatchalian.
To the Committee on Local Government.
1376, declare San Pablo Church, located in the municipality of San Pablo, Isabela, and its adjacent environs a tourism destination, and appropriating funds therefore by Senator Revilla Jr.
To the Committees on Tourism and Finance.
1377, an act declaring the adjacent environs of the St. Matthias Parish Church, located in the municipality of Tumawini, Isabela, a tourism destination, and appropriating funds therefore by Senator Revilla Jr.
To the Committee on Tourism and Finance.
1378, an act providing an increase in an automatic adjustment mechanism in the personal economic relief allowance granted to government employees by Senator Villar M.
To the Committees on Civil Service, Government Reorg, and Finance.
1379, to proclaim third week of June as Deaf Blind Awareness Week by Senator Villar M.
To the Committee on Health and Demography.
1380, encouraging and promoting the use and development of satellite-based technologies for internet connectivity by Senator Subiri.
To the Committees on Science and Technology, Public Services, and Finance.
1381, requiring all public telecommunications entities and internet service providers to increase service coverage and deliver a minimum standard for internet connection speed by Senator Subiri.
To the Committee on Public Services.
1382, an act requiring critical information infrastructure institutions to adopt and implement adequate measures to protect their information and communications technology systems and infrastructure by Senator Subiri.
To the Committee on Science and Technology, Finance.
1383, an act promoting open access and internet services and for other purposes by Senator Subiri.
Committees on Science and Technology and Public Services.
1384 is strengthening the Commission on Elections by increasing the manpower complement of its field offices, providing office spaces separate and independent from local government units, and appropriating funds therefore amending for the purpose Batas Pambansa Bilang 881 as amended, otherwise known as the Omnibus Election Code of the Philippines by Senator Revilla Jr.
Committees on Electoral Reform, People's Participation, Finance.
Resolutions, proposed Senate Resolution 250, honoring and commending the outstanding women in the nation's service towns 2022 awardees by Senator Binay.
To the Committee on Rules.
251, congratulating and commending the Bayanihan Philippine Dance Company for winning the grand prize at the Shonan World Dance Festival 2022 by Senator Binay.
Committee on Rules.
252, recognizing and commending the outstanding women and national service towns 2022 for their positive contribution and dedication in the strengthening of nation building by Senator Revilla Jr.
The Committee on Rules.
253, directing the appropriate committee of the Senate to undertake an inquiry to determine the maintained integrity and trustworthiness of the Philippine Sweepstakes Office Lotto Games of Senator Pimentel III.
To the Committee on Games and Amusements.
254, directing the appropriate Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation, the power situation in the province of Albay to ensure the continuous supply of electricity to consumers by Senator Gatchalian.
To the Committee on Energy.
255, directing the appropriate Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on unlocking the oil and gas potential in the West Philippine Sea towards improving exploration, development, and utilization with the end in view of achieving energy security and self-sufficiency by Senator Gatchalian.
To the Committee on Energy.
256, congratulating and commending Mayor Felix Marshall for his third straight professional boxing victory at the middleweight boxing match against Steven Pichardo in California, United States of America by Senator Villanueva.
Committee on Rules.
257, directing the proper Senate committees to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on Far Eastern University public policy and thirst findings that elementary textbooks contain factual inaccuracies by Senator Binay.
Committee on Basic Education.
258, directing the appropriate Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in the exercise of the Senate's oversight powers on the attempted escape of the 3 detainees and subsequent hostage-taking incident inside the custodial center of the Philippine National Police in Camp Crame, Quezon City, with the end view of ensuring the enforcement of adequate security and safety measures inside the PNP detention facilities and prevention of any untoward and violent incidents within their premises by Senator Estrada.
Committees on Public Order, Dangerous Drugs, Justice and Human Rights.
259, directed the Farmer Senate committees to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the reported warning issued by the World Health Organization over India-made cough syrups after deaths in the Gambia, with the objective of reviewing the existing measures on the procurement of medicines in the country by Senator Binay.
The Committee on Health and Demography.
260, commending Eugenio Eugene Torre, Asia's first chess grandmaster, for being the first Asian male to be inducted in the World Chess Hall of Fame of the World Chess Federation by Senator Revilla Jr.
To the Committee on Rules.
Committee reports. Committee report number 6, prepared and submitted jointly with the Committees of Higher Technical and Vocational Education and Basic Education on Senate Bill 1359, with Senators Revilla, De La Rosa, Villarci, Subiri, Escudero, and Gatchalan as authors thereof. An act prohibiting the imposition of a no permit, no exam policy or any policy that prevents students enrolled in public or private educational institutions from taking examinations or any form of educational assessment for reasons of outstanding financial or property obligations such as unpaid tuition and other school fees, recommending its approval and substitution of Senate Bills 507, 524, 787. Sponsor, Senator Escudero.
To the calendar of ordinary business.
7, prepared and submitted jointly with the Committees on Higher Technical and Vocational Education and Finance on Senate Bill 1360 with Senators Revilla Jr., Estrada, Escudero, and Angara as authors thereof, entitled An Act Expanding the Coverage of the Tertiary Education Subsidy, amending for the purpose Republic Act Number 10931, the Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education Act, recommending its approval and substitution of Senate Bills 29 and 279 by Senator Escudero.
The calendar of ordinary business. You have
Additional
additional reference of business. Please proceed.
Additional reference to business, message from the House of Representatives. Letter informing the Senate that on 28 September 2022, it passed House Bill number 4488, entitled An Act Appropriating Funds for the Operation of the Government of the Republic of the Philippines from January 1 to December 31, 2023, in which it requests the concurrence of the Senate.
To the Committee on Finance.
Bills on first reading, 1385, an act providing measures to protect individuals engaged in delivery services by Senator Padilla.
To the Committee on Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship.
1386, institutionalizing the promotion of integrated urban agriculture and other emerging innovative sustainable agricultural production practices and technologies in cities and other strategic areas throughout the country to address food security concerns, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes by Senator Lapid.
To the Committees on Agriculture, Ways and Means, and Finance.
1387, creating a Cacao Research and Development Center, authorizing the appropriation of funds therefore and for other purposes by Senator Lapid.
To the Committee on Agriculture, Science and Technology, and Finance.
1388, an act providing for rules on the duty to render assistance at sea in accordance with relevant international conventions to which the Philippines is a state party and for other purposes by Senator Tolentino.
To the Committees on Foreign Relations and Public Services.
1389, creating a mandatory position for a human resource management officer in local government units, amending for the purpose sections 443, 455, and 463 of RA 7160, the Local Government Code of 1991 by Senator Revilla Jr.
To the Committee on Local Government, Civil Service, and Finance.
1390, to enhance the capability and streamline organizational role of the Department of National Defense and its bureaus, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes by Senator Revilla Jr.
To the Committees on National Defense and Security, Civil Service, and Finance.
1391, an act institutionalizing the fertilizer and pesticide subsidy program under the Department of Agriculture and appropriating funds therefore by Senator Revilla Jr.
To the Committee on Agriculture, Food and Agrarian Reform, and Finance.
1392, an act institutionalizing a results-based national evaluation policy by Senator Revilla Jr.
To the Committee on Economic Affairs and Finance.
1393, an act mandating the appointment of barangay health workers and barangays and providing for their duties and responsibilities, compensation and benefits, and for other purposes by Senator Revilla Jr.
To the Committees on Health and Finance,
1394,
and Local Government and Finance.
1394, modernizing the national measurement system of the Philippines, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes by Senator Revilla Jr.
To the Committees on Science and Technology and Finance.
1395, creating the Department of Water Resources Management, defining its powers and functions, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes by Senator Tolentino.
To the Committees on Public Services, Civil Service, and Finance.
1396, an act instituting policies for the protection and welfare of caregivers in the practice of their profession by Senator Tolentino.
To the Committees on Labor and Employment, Human Resource Development.
1397, an act imposing stiffer penalties for child abuse, exploitation, and discrimination, amending for the purpose RA 7610 as amended by Senator Tolentino.
To the Committee on Women, Children, Family Relations, and Gender Equality.
1398, an act mandating the proper installation and maintenance of overhead electric supply, communication lines, and its structure by all electric, cable, and telecommunications companies for purposes of public safety and good housekeeping by Senator Tolentino.
To the Committees on Public Services, Urban Planning and Housing.
1399, in recognizing the indigenous cultural communities and indigenous peoples, community conserved territories and areas, establishing for the purpose the National ICCA Registry and appropriating funds therefore by Senator Hontiveros.
To the Committees on Cultural Communities and Finance.
1400, institutionalizing and enhancing the role of parent, teacher, and community associations in promoting the welfare and protecting the rights of children, amending for the purpose Presidential Decree 603, otherwise known as the Child and Youth Welfare Code by Senator Hontiveros.
To the Committees on Women and Children and Basic Education.
1401, an act declaring January 18 of every year a special non-working holiday for all Kasambahay in the entire country. The act shall be called National Kasambahay Day or Araw ng Kasambahay by Senator Hontiveros.
To the Committee on Labor and Employment, Human Resource Development.
1402, institutionalizing the community-driven development approach as a national strategy for inclusive growth and social protection. mandating all national government agencies and departments, including the attached agencies, offices, and bureaus, LGUs, and other government instrumentalities to implement their community-based programs, activities, and projects appropriating funds therefore by Senator Hontiveros.
To the Committees on Social Justice, Welfare and Rural Development, Local Government, and Finance.
1403, an act establishing the Young Farmers and Fisherfolk Challenge Program, creating for the purpose the Young Farmers and Fisherfolk Challenge Council, and appropriating funds therefore by Senator Rebilla Jr.
The Committees on Youth, Agriculture, Ways and Means, and Finance.
1404, an act adjusting the monthly pension and disability benefits of retirees of the Department of Foreign Affairs, and appropriating funds therefore by Senator Rebilla Jr.
The Committees on Government, Corporations, Public Enterprises, Foreign Relations, and Finance.
1405, providing for the condonation of all unpaid principal interest penalties or surcharges on loans secured by agrarian reform beneficiaries under the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program, and for the other purposes by Senator Rebilla Jr.
Committee on Agriculture, Food, and Grand Reform.
1406, an act providing an increase in the personal economic relief allowance granted to government employees, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes by Senator Rebilla Jr.
To the Committees on Civil Service and Finance.
1407, an act granting free college entrance examinations to underprivileged public senior high school graduating students and graduates belonging to the top 15% of their graduating class for admission in private higher school education institutions by Senator Rebilla Jr.
To the Committees on Higher Technical and Vocational Education and Basic Education.
1408, an act protecting senior citizens from violence, defining elder abuse and prescribing penalties therefore by Senator Rebilla Jr.
To the Committees on Justice and Human Rights, Social Justice, Welfare, and Finance.
1409, an act to promote and support the development and growth of the Philippine film industry, creating for the purpose Philippine Film Commission, defining its powers and functions, and for other purposes by Senator Rebilla Jr.
To the Committees on Public Information, Mass Media, Ways and Means, and Finance.
Resolutions, proposed Senate Resolution number 261, urging the leadership of the Philippine National Police to undertake any and all necessary measures to guarantee the safety and security of former Senator Laila de Lima, and henceforth keep the Senate duly informed on security actions taken on her behalf by Senators Pimentel III and Hontiveros.
To the Committee on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs.
262, directing the appropriate Senate committee to conduct an inquiry on the palpable and emerging effects of climate change to ensure the safety and welfare of Filipinos amidst the threats and dangers brought about by the increasing frequency and intensity of natural disasters and calamities, with the end of view of ensuring the systems and policies that will uphold safety and resiliency are institutionalized by Senator Rebilla Jr.
To the Committee on Environment, Natural Resources, and Climate Change.
263, directing the appropriate Senate committee to conduct an inquiry on the transfer of controlling interests of the members of the Malampaya Consortium, with a specific focus on the recently approved transfer of Shell Petroleum Envis ownership of Shell Philippines Exploration BV to Prime Infrastructure Capital to ascertain their legal, technical, and financial qualifications, their compliance with the service contract, and the status of these operations of Malampaya towards ensuring continuous energy supply in the country by Senator Gatchalian.
To the Committee on Energy.
264, directing the Senate Committee on Public and Dangerous Drugs to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the reported claims that the order to kill veteran journalist and radio commentator Percival Percy Lapid Mabasa originated and was planned inside the new believed prison, with the end in view of enacting remedial legislation that would prevent the recurrence of similar incidents by Senator Rebilla Jr.
Committee on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs, Justice and Human Rights.
265, directing the appropriate Senate committee to conduct a mandatory review of the Local Government Code of 1991 in compliance with Section 521 of the same, with the end in view of further strengthening LGUs and providing more responsive, modern, democratic, and participatory local government structure for citizens by Senator Hontiveros.
Committees on Local Government.
Committee report number 8, prepared and submitted jointly by the Committees on Cultural Communities and Muslim Affairs and Women, Children, Family Relations, and Gender Equality on Senate Bill number 1410, with Senators Estrada, Padilla, and Hontiveros as authors thereof, entitled An Act Declaring the first day of February of every year as National Ihab Day, recommending its approval and substitution of Senate Bill numbers 805 and 1272. Sponsors, Senator Robin Hood C. Padilla.
To the calendar for ordinary business. Majority Leader, before we take up other matters or we suspend for caucus, I'd just like to also take this opportunity to congratulate the team of legislators that went to the EU to discuss, of course, the generalized scheme of preferences plus. And they did a great job, headed by our distinguished Chairman of Finance, Senator Angara. Thank you, sir. And tomorrow I'll also probably come up with a report on our trip as well, heading the delegation for France. It was a very fruitful week and a half, and I believe we were able to deliver the message that the Philippines is back on track. We're back in the world map, and we'd like to ask them to reinvest in the Philippines. By the way, just an information of the body, I just got feedback from our contacts in EU. They're going to already give FTA, free trade agreement, to Indonesia. Not to us, not to us, not to us. FTA to Indonesia in 2 weeks' time. So that puts a lot of pressure to us because they already have a free trade agreement to Vietnam and Singapore. And I think Thailand is coming soon. So we have to push the DTI together with the DFA and our friends in the Senate of the France and the parliamentarians of EU that they look favorably to the FTA for the Philippines as well. It will open up a lot of opportunities, particularly to our manufacturing and agriculture sector. So, Majority Leader?
Yes, Mr. President, and let me put on record that I attest to that, and also put on record that very moment when we were acknowledged in the Senate plenary hall,
Yes.
when our leader, Senate President Mig Subiri, together with the members of the Philippine Senate, were acknowledged. It was a momentous and something that I will never forget for the rest of my life. And I'm just so proud that we did that trip, and I know that the fruits of our labor will never be in vain. Mr. President, the Senate President Pro Tem.
Before I recognize the Senate President Pro Tem, I'd like to put on record, we also attended a very successful meeting with Senator Coco Pimentel as the head of delegation in 2017. 2017.
2017, yes, Mr.
2017.
President.
Unfortunately, and the good Senate President Coco will attest to this, they were on break that time, kaya hindi tayo na-recognize in
Yeah.
plenary. But this time they were having sessions, and they brought us to the plenary floor, and they recognized us. They gave us a standing ovation. So that was quite nice to see. Yes, our Senate President Pro Tempore.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I join you in congratulating the various delegations that went to Thailand, the EU, and France as well, and Vietnam as well. And allow me to state, Mr. President, that it was this Senate in the 17th Congress, and some of us were here already, where we unanimously concurred in the ratification of the Partnership Cooperation Agreement, the PCA, which is the legal framework that created the body that will negotiate for the FTA. Without the PCA, the working committee that met earlier this year to set up the legal framework for an FTA would not happen. It was, I believe, in 2012, if my memory serves me right, in the Aquino administration, that it was supposedly brought to DFA. It was only in 2017, 5 years later, under the Duterte administration, that it was signed, I'm not sure of the right word, signed or concurred, or no, signed. And it was transmitted that same year to this Senate. I believe it was Senate President Pimentel and yours truly as then chair of the Finance Committee, and some of the members of this chamber had unanimously concurred in that. Having said that, it is important that we pressure and remind the new DTI that heads our PCA workforce so that the 5 years work of the PCA can lead to the enactment of an FTA. You yourself mentioned, I'm glad that you had mentioned that our neighbors in ASEAN, never mind Singapore because they're a very small nation and yes, very progressive. But Indonesia, very, very Indonesia, with the same population, similar problems, vulnerabilities as well, and Vietnam as well. Wag naman masasabing naunahan na naman tayo. So, I will ask these questions, Mr. President, when the budget of the DTI comes to the floor. I want to see what kind of efforts, strides, accomplishments the DTI has done in the past year and in the past few months of the new administration to ensure that we are not left behind Indonesia, Singapore, and Vietnam with regards to the FTA. Having said that, Mr. President, I think it is also timely that perhaps in the next few days, if not weeks, we can have a thorough report of the various delegations that went on several missions. As I say this, Mr. President, there are regions of our country under a state of national calamity. I come from the region of Panay, Mr. President, and the President is visiting my province tomorrow. I will not be able to join because I will be here with the sponsorship of the budget of our chairman, Senator Angara, and as vice chair of the Finance Committee. Having said that, I also urge our executive department to speedily help all provinces and local communities who have collapsed bridges and impassable roads, including my province, which has been rendered almost an island because of the collapsed road between Iloilo and Antique and the collapsed bridge between the central municipalities. But I also would like to take this opportunity, Mr. President, to commend the regional office of the DPWH who have been working day and night and with no resources because it's the end of year budget using the QRF, which is again another law that this chamber had passed 10 years ago. And so with the existing equipment and the men and personnel of the region and the district are working together with the private sector to rebuild, at least reconstruct, to make that collapsed bridge possible so we are not rendered to be an island during this time. I know there are many other provinces, including Capiz, including Aklan, and areas where you went, I saw on, in your pronouncements in social media, in Mindanao and in the autonomous region. Again, in the budget of the DPWH, I will ask the exact, accurate, detailed bridges that have been affected by Typhoon Paeng and the assessment and monitoring of these bridges and how soon these can be reconstructed, not only in my home region, but especially in areas in Mindanao as well. I'm just mentioning that so that the vice chairs or chair of the committee can also prepare because we want a report and we want action now, not when the GAA is signed in 2023. Because as we mentioned in the OP budget, they have the QRF, they have the NDREAM fund. And I know that the chairman of the finance committee knows this. There's more than 15 billion that can be utilized so that collapsed bridges can be done as early as now. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much to our Senate President Pro Tempore. And Majority Leader, I'd just like to make a quick inquiry also. The chairperson of the Committee on Foreign Affairs, Foreign Relations are with us, Senator Marcos, on the issue on RCEP. Every time we discuss it with Asian parliamentarians, we're the only country pala was not yet ratified. May it be sponsored soon on the floor so we can act on its approval or vote if possible, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you,
Majority
Mr.
Leader.
President. At this juncture, may I move that we suspend for 1 Senate minute?
Before we
that-
do that, I'd just like to recognize our spouses. They're all
Oh, yes,
packed.
Mr. President, let me acknowledge the First Lady of the Senate, Miss Audrey Zubiri, who
That's
is
the Speaker of my house, yes.
the boss of our boss in the Senate, Mr. President.
And the other wives are, I think the other
And the spouses are
spouses
also here,
spouses
Mr.
are also
President.
there. Thank you. And I'd like to remind everybody at 7 o'clock, we will suspend session because there is the lighting. Is it 6 o'clock? 6 o'clock, there's the lighting of the lanterns outside the building. Our spouses are requesting us to attend and join them outside when we light these lanterns. So, okay, there being another important matters, we will move to suspend for 1 Senate minute to allow a caucus to discuss the deliberations of the budget.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Majority Leader, Senator JV. I believe we have members who want to deliver privileged speeches.
With the permission of the body, we take this privileged speech up. I ask that we recognize Mr. President, Senator Raffy Tulfo, to deliver his speech.
Senator Raffy Tulfo, the distinguished gentleman from Isabela, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished colleagues, I speak before you today on a matter of personal and collective privilege. May mga nagsasabi na tuwing nagsasalita ako, I make them uncomfortable. I tend to be harsh. But I have to come to learn in the years that I have been a broadcaster that discomfort drives change. And that is why I stand before you today, because it seems that we have become desensitized with regard to the plight of our laborers in the cases they file with the NLRC. Recently, there has been an increase in incidents of employees encountering difficulties in recovering their money claims or executing judgment that they fought so hard for. Just last week, my attention was called regarding incidents involving cases that they brought before the NLRC. A heartbreaking example is the case of Tommy Flabiano at ang kanyang mga kasamahan na kahit nanalo na sila sa NLRC, nahirapan sila makasingil ng kanilang panalo. Nagsimula sila na 20 sila ng mga complainants at dahil sa tinagal at bagal ng proseso, 9 sa kanila ang namatay na. 11 na lang natitira. Dinarasal po ng natitirang 11 na ito na sana madatnan pa nila na sila ay mga buhay pa at matanggap ang kanilang ipinanalong pera. Mr. President, we will make sure that things like this should and will not ever happen again. Ironically, the Constitution provides as a policy that the state affirms labor as primary social economic force. It shall protect the rights of workers and promote their welfare. But if you go to the office of the NLRC and ask them if they feel that they are valued as a primary social economic force, I'm quite sure they will either laugh at you or they will be clueless about what that means. Indeed, the enforcement of rights through litigation is not the same for our employers and employees. Iba ang pinagdadaanan ng abusadong employer at ng kanyang kawawang manggagawa. Ang employer, pag nanalo, di mahirap para ipa-execute ang desisyon. Kadalasan, inaaprubahan lang ang pagtanggal ng empleyado. Pero, pag nanalo ang empleyado, pahirapan. Parang treasure hunt ang paghahanap ng mananagot sa award ng korte. Saan ba ang problema pagdating sa mga proseso sa NLRC? Based on interviews and research that we have conducted, the concerns arise at the very beginning when the parties go to the SENA or single entry approach, where parties appear before a mediation officer to possibly reach an amicable settlement. Even if these procedures provided only the parties will attend, sometimes the employer party sends their lawyer posing as their representatives to attend the conference. The employees are easily intimidated. I propose that only non-lawyers could represent parties before the SENA. Further, the SENA officers must be given guidelines by the NLRC on unreasonable settlements being proposed at the SENA level. The officers must be able to protect the employees against these kinds of agreements when their rights are really being violated. When the parties do not reach a settlement before the SENA, they proceed to file the case before the labor arbiter. At this point, delays has been noted in the resolution of cases. During the hearing before the Committee on Labor, before our staunch labor defender, Senator Jinggoy Estrada, the NLRC admitted the delay that has been caused by delay in filing and service of pleadings and processes. But I would like to point out that during the pandemic, the courts and even the NLRC have resorted to electronic filing. I implore that the NLRC institutionalize the use of this digital technology in its filing and service. The Supreme Court has provided sufficient guidelines when it comes to electronic filing and service. The NLRC could follow suit. But the biggest problem our employees have is execution. Kumbaga, parati silang nga matapos nilang ipaglaban ang kanilang kaso. True, the rules of the NRRC provide for a crash bond and surety bond. But the problem is the cash bond and surety bond only arises when the case is appealed from the labor arbiter to the NLRC. Most employers who want to evade the payment of money claims would stop fighting their cases with their employees at the labor arbiter level because if they appeal to the commission, they have to file a cash bond or surety bond equivalent to the award. Thus, it's easier to simply hide taguana ng mga ari-arian. We have to do something about this because the rights that we provide in our laws becomes useless when the employees could not enforce them in the end, hence resulting in just paper victory. Nagpagod lang ang kawawang empleyado. I will file a proposal to provide a way to garnish the properties of the employers at the labor arbiter level. This will ensure that even while the case is pending, the employees will have something to run after to answer for a favorable judgment. And during execution, it seems that the sheriffs are always at a loss in running after corporate employers who either close down or empty the coffers of the corporate entity to avoid paying the judgment award. It is difficult to have to prove the piercing of corporate entities in executing judgment. I propose that if the employer party fails to appear during the execution conference of labor money claims and could not provide for the settlement of the judgment claims, there will be a presumption that the piercing doctrine will apply and the officers and directors will be solidarily liable for the judgment award. Excuse me. My dear colleagues, we provide our laborers with so much benefits, but when it is violated and we do not ensure its enforcement, our work here in the legislature becomes useless. I would like to end my speech with the quote of social activist Brian Stevenson. He said, thank you, the opposite of property, the opposite of wealth the opposite of poverty is not wealth. The opposite of poverty is justice. Social justice mandates us to give our less fortunate laborers a fighting chance with the laws that we implement. Hindi basta bigay lang tayo ng bigay ng karapatan at benepisyo. Kailangan siguraduhin natin ang mga ito ay may papatupad. Thank you, Mr. President, and my dear colleagues, for indulging me with your time and attention.
Thank you. Maraming po salamat, Senator Tulfo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, there being no member who wish to interpolate right now and wanting to be part of the deliberation in this particular issue, I move that we refer the privileged speech of the gentleman from Isabela, Senator Rafi Tulfo, to the Committee on Labor, Employment, and Human Resources Development.
There
So
being no
moved, Mr.
objection, the motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration on Committee Report Number 3 in relation to fiasco behind Sugar Order Number 4. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection to the motion, motion approved.
Mr. President, the parliamentary status of the measures that we are in the period of interpellations, there being no other member who has manifested the intention to interpellate, I move that we close the period of interpellation.
There being no objection, the motion is approved.
Mr. President, with the consent of the chamber, I now move to open the period of amendments and ask that we recognize the distinguished sponsor of the measure, Senator Francis Tolentino, the chairperson of the Blue Ribbon Committee of the Senate.
The distinguished gentleman from the great province of Cavite, Senator Francis Tolentino, is recognized.
Then, just some sundry committee amendments, Mr. President. The committee would propose the following. Mr. President, on page 36, line 15, delete starting from line 15 of page 36 to line 3 of page 37 and insert the following words and phrases. And I quote, Senator Pimentel, correct, sir. Kaya nga ganito. If you go back to the basic economics principle, of supply and demand, are you telling this committee that the 70 pesos per kilo is an artificial price? Answer of Mr. Lobregat, yes. Senator Pimentel. So somebody is absorbing a loss when it sells at 70 pesos per kilo. Mr. Lobregat's answer, not necessarily a loss. An opportunity to make more money. Senator Pimentel, iyon, precisely an opportunity to make more money. So at 110 pesos per kilo, who is having this opportunity to make a lot of money? Mr. Lobregat. Mr. Senator, I do not want to accuse. Elaborating further on the question of Senator Pimentel as to who is having the opportunity to make more money, Mr. Lobregat responded to it. Mr. Lobregat, Mr. Senator, I just want to make a statement that the sugar industry is the most organized agricultural product in the country. We did not want these high prices, and this is why we are pushing for importation when we saw that there was a need to balance the supply and demand requirement. But there are many other things that prevented this. That was explained very clearly in my congressional presentation, which I think we gave it, it's on YouTube, but we also gave it to the Senate. It is very short. It is a very short explanation with very simple to understand. And I call it the perfect storm. We got hit by a storm which paralyzed Negros momentarily, but it did not have lingering effects on refined sugar production. Then an importation program was delayed. Sugar order number 3 was delayed by a TRO. The elections happened. There was paralysis in the government for a while. I mean paralysis in quotation until the new administration took over. And this is why prices were alarmingly high. And we were trying to stop this by bringing in an importation program. We were saying that from the very beginning, there is going to be a big deficit. And this is not, and if this is not corrected, then prices are just going to go up because when there is a big demand, there is also a very small supply. I gave 5 pieces of sugar to sell, and once one starts bidding, a buyer starts outbidding the other, what am I going to do, right? I will sell it to the highest bidder. Here, I have no one. Who wants it? I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, Majority Leader?
Yeah.
There being no objection to the motion of the good sponsor, motion approved.
Second amendment, Mr. President, on page 57, line 1, insert the following words and phrases. And I quote, except for those in the military and uniformed personnel services, those designated as officer in charge, in all government agencies, including government-owned and controlled corporations, shall have a limited, non-extendable tenure of not more than 60 days. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection to the motion or amendment, amendments approved.
Another committee amendment, Mr. President, on page 75, delete lines 5 to 11, and in lieu thereof, insert the following words and phrases to it. Let a copy of this committee report be furnished the Department of Justice, the Commission on Audit, the Office of the Ombudsman, and the Bureau of Immigration and Deportation for their information and appropriate action, including but not limited to the conduct of necessary preliminary investigation, sectoral performance audit, and the possible issuance of immigration lookout bulletin against the respondents if the case warrants. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, the amendments approved.
Finally, Mr. President, on page 75, after line 11, insert the following words and phrases. The minority view or the minority report shall be appended and made part of the committee report for purposes of transmittal to other government agencies and to the public. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection to the amendment, amendments approved.
There are no further committee amendments, Mr. President.
Mr. President, therefore, I move that we close the period of committee amendments. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, the motion, the majority floor leader, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move to open the period of individual amendments and again recognize the sponsor, Senator Tolentino. And
There are no
and if there are
individual
no other
amendments.
members who wish to, the minority leader seeking
The
the floor.
minority
Mr.
leader,
President.
Senator Coco Pimentel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a manifestation that the minority will no longer propose individual amendments because we have filed our own minority report. And per the amendments introduced by the sponsor, it will now be appended to the report, the committee report. So I think we are satisfied with that arrangement, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
We thank the good minority leader, Mr. President.
With that, Mr. President, with no other individual amendments, I move to close the period of individual amendments. I so move, Mr.
There being no
President.
objection, period of individual amendments is closed.
Mr. President, at
Thank you,
this
Mr.
juncture, I move to approve the recommendations in Committee Report Number 3 regarding privileged speech of Senate President entitled Fiasco Behind Sugar Order Number 4, delivered on August 15, 2022. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, the motion is approved.
We thank and congratulate our hardworking chairperson of the Blue Ribbon
And let's
Committee.
congratulate him. He just got his new master's, third Masters of Law.
That's
at,
additional
Columbia
congratulations, Mr.
University.
President. And we are all waiting for the treat, Mr. President.
Yeah, or the, yes, you
Yes,
blow
that
out,
is
blow out
the
the chairman.
tradition, Mr. President.
So I know our spouses are waiting for us outside. Do we have any other important matters to take up, Majority Leader?
Mr. President, there are rumors here that we are the head of the house and our spouses are the neck of the house.
In my case, my spouse is the Speaker of my house.
Yes,
Speaker
Mr.
of the House.
President. So with that, Mr. President, I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Tuesday, November 8, 2022. I so move.
Before I adjourn, I'd like to ask all our colleagues if they can attend outside. Kakanta po si Jo Marie Chan together. Ay, ano? Tama? Jose Marie Chan. Oh, kakanta siya. And we will officially light the lanterns of the Senate to start the Christmas festivities. There being no objection, the session is adjourned until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Tuesday, November 8, 2022. Maraming salamat po.